Let me tell you, if you think this motor looks bad sitting here right now, you should have seen it before I swept all the spider webs and mess off of it. So this is under the hood. This is my 79 Chevy Silverado drag truck. All right, it's been sitting up for about 20 years, actually 22 years since I ran it last, this being the year 2024. I last ran it in 02. The motor actually still turns over. It hasn't been started probably in, I'd say 14 years, but I occasionally come out here and turn it over, and it does still turn over. I wouldn't dare start it after it's been sitting this long, even if it would. It probably would, honestly, but I don't think I would. You're talking it's a 714 lift roller cam and all that. That's been sitting for all this long. I don't think I would fire something like this up, even if I cleaned the carburetor out. But this is what it is. This was what was in it historically the last little bit I ran it. This is a 427, actually. It's an odd oversize. I did some horse trading for this when the original 454 blew up. And I don't know how the guy that I got it from arrived at this particular combo, but from what I can gather, I guess his bores were worn and he needed to go to the next size, and this was probably late 90s, so I don't think there was quite as many 190 over, 125 over pistons available like there are now, and he didn't want to go that far. So what they did was, I guess they took the worst cylinder and honed it until it was perfect, and then custom ordered JE pistons off of that size, which ended up being 4.322, which is 72 over. That makes about a 441 if I'm calculating right. So it's got a 427 bottom end, crank, factory steel crank. It's actually a 454 block, but if you know anything about big blocks, a 427 and a 454 have the same block. So you put the guts out of a 427 and a 454 block, you have a 427. But the pistons were custom ordered. These are closed chambered rectangular heads. They haven't been ported, but they have been cut or shaved quite a bit, to the point to where the intake had to be milled on the bottom of it. You'd sit it right here and it wouldn't even touch the heads. It had to be milled. Seems like about 43 thousandths before it would touch, and made up with them. So they've had a good valve job and a bunch of milling, but no porting other than port matching. Roughly around 14-1 is what I was told, with the custom pistons and the obviously decreased combustion chamber size. Good old compression and a decent sized roller cam horsepower motor from back in the day is what it is. Barry Grant 1050 Dominator on it. Team G intake, as you can probably see. I can assure you I didn't run it like this. This was a complete rig years ago, because one of the fuel filters had rusted out, kind of like this one is, if you see there, and it was leaking, and I needed to move the truck. Probably one of the last times it ever started. And I sent my buddy up to the parts store to get one of those, and he came back with this. And rather than take it back, I was like, well, I'm going to run it soon, and I'll just replace all that stuff. And of course, here we are 20 years later or 15 years later, and it hasn't. Anyway, this is what was in it. This truck was 4,000 and about 30 pounds with me in it. And with this motor here, it ran, I think, a best of 696 in the 8th at right about 100 miles an hour. Consistent 698, 699s, which is not too bad. I mean, that cam that was in this motor was made for it was special ordered. This motor was in a Roadster, so it was made for a light car, but it runs pretty good in here. As you can see, the truck pretty much never was really de-streetified too much. You still got the factory booster on there. Master cylinder's been replaced, but a factory booster, which oddly enough worked just fine with this big old roller cam. They told me it wouldn't work, so I plugged it up anyway. I was like, well, I'll have manual brakes, and dang if it didn't work. The AC evaporator and all that's never been taken off. I am struggling with whether to do that or not. Part of me would love to have the extra room in here. Another part of me sort of likes the fact that this thing looks like you could just hook a few things back up and go drive it down the road. That's a decision to be made later. This motor is going to be pulled when I get a little closer on the body work. And I'll probably go through it, freshen it up, replace valve springs. Probably nothing else really wrong with it unless the cylinder walls are rusted, and I'll have to make a decision about boring it then. But I'm going to go back with a bigger motor, most likely going to be a 572. And so this motor will either get sold or be a spare, or who knows, maybe I'll part it out. But it's a good, really good old-fashioned motor. Nothing wrong with it, other than it's been sitting for a while. So that's the motor. Transmission's a turbo 400 with an ATI 8-inch stall converter in it. It always ran foot brake, never had a box or anything in it. I don't know if I'll put that back in there when I get it back running. But anyway, that is the Powertrain. I may make a video later on the kind of the history and the evolution of this, how this truck went from a stock 454 to this. But that's what's in it for now. If you got any questions or comments, you know, this is my baby. I've had this thing, it's been in my family since 1980 when my dad bought it with 5,000 miles on it. So I love to talk about it. So if you got any questions, comments, suggestions, let me know. Thanks for watching.